Okay, let's jump right in. Today we're taking a deep dive into something that feels like sci-fi but is, well, becoming very real. We're looking at humanity's actual plans right now for setting up shop beyond Earth.
Yeah, permanent presence,
Yeah,
not just flags and footprints anymore.
exactly. Moon bases, Mars colonies, actually building things, not just visiting. You shared a bunch of sources detailing these, frankly, incredible future plans.
Hmm.
So our mission today is to dig into that specific material you provided, pull out the key insights, the surprising stuff, and get a real handle on where things are headed, based purely on those documents.
And what's really striking in those sources is this fundamental shift in thinking. We've done the Apollo missions, sent rovers exploring Mars,
Yeah.
amazing stuff. But the focus now, in the plans you shared, it's about staying.
Right, from exploration to habitation, that's the
Yeah.
core change.
Exactly.
And the material makes it pretty clear. The immediate focus is, well, our nearest neighbor, the moon. NASA's Artemis program gets a lot of attention in the sources, aiming for a sustainable human presence there, possibly before 2030. But it's definitely not just government agencies anymore, is it?
No, not at all. The sources really highlight how integrated private companies are. SpaceX, Blue Origin, they're building the landers, the habitats, handling logistics. It's a major partnership model.
And the moon isn't just like the final stop in these initial plans. It's framed as the proving ground.
That's a key point in the documents. They talk about specific tech being tested right there on the moon, like
Yeah.
using lunar regolith, that's the moon dust for building material.
Right, 3D printing structures with it, potentially.
Exactly. Or figuring out how to get water ice from those polar craters. These aren't just, cool science experiments. The sources present them as essential steps for long-term living off Earth. Lessons learned for the next big jump.
Which is obviously Mars. That's the ultimate goal discussed in the material you sent over. SpaceX's plan to get humans there, maybe in the next decade.
Hmm.
It's ambitious, and it features prominently.
It certainly does.
So according to these sources, why Mars? What makes it the target, beyond just, the red planet allure?
Well, the sources point to a few things. There's the potential for finding signs of past, maybe even present microbial life. That's a huge scientific driver.
Okay.
It's also relatively close compared to other places. And then there's the really long-term, very complex idea of terraforming, making it more Earth-like someday.
Wow. But the material doesn't shy away from the massive challenges, does it?
Not at all. It's very clear. Radiation exposure is a huge one mentioned. The extreme temperature swings mean you need seriously advanced habitats and power
And
sources.
the isolation, multi-year trips.
Yeah, the psychological impact is a major hurdle sources definitely cover. It's daunting.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting technologically, because none of this happens without some serious new gear.
Mm.
The sources talk a lot about the advancements making it possible.
Hmm. Reusable rockets are fundamental. They drastically lower the cost to launch anything, which, makes a sustained presence actually seem feasible economically. That point comes up.
Right, and AI for navigation.
Crucial, especially for Mars missions. The communication delays are just too long for real-time control from Earth for complex maneuvers. So the spacecraft need to be smart, make decisions on their own. The sources touch on that.
And what about getting there faster? I saw mentions of nuclear propulsion.
Yes, that's a big one for deep space travel in the documents. It could potentially cut the travel time to Mars almost in half.
How?
Basically using nuclear energy to heat propellant way hotter than chemical rockets can, so it gets expelled much faster. More thrust, shorter trip.
Makes sense. And advanced life support too, right? Recycling air and water.
Absolutely critical and mentioned explicitly. For long journeys and permanent bases, you need systems that recycle nearly everything. Closed-loop systems, they call them.
Fascinating stuff. Now, the sources also frame this not just as like a U.S.-centric thing or a new space race, but more global.
That's definitely a theme. They mention missions from other countries. India's Chandrayaan moon probes, their Mangalyaan Mars orbiter. China's lunar program is also highlighted as very ambitious.
So capability is spreading.
Right. And collaboration, like we've seen with the International Space Station for decades, is sort of presented either directly or implicitly as pretty vital, especially for these huge undertakings like building settlements off-world. Pooling resources just makes sense.
Okay, so connecting all these threads,
Mm-hmm.
the engineering, the destinations, the sources you shared don't stop there. They also, quite clearly, up some big ethical and philosophical questions alongside all the tech talk.
They really do. And it prompts a really important question, I think. As we pour all this effort and, frankly, money into going further out, How do we balance that with the very real problems we still have right here on Earth?
Yeah, should solving climate change or poverty take absolute priority? It's a tough one, raised by the material.
It is. And there's another layer, too, woven through the sources. As we explore and maybe settle these new places, how do we make sure we don't just repeat old mistakes?
You mean like exploitation or a new kind of colonization?
Exactly. How do we approach this exploration responsibly and ethically? That question definitely emerges from the reading.
So this future of space exploration, as laid out in the material you provided, well, it's thrilling, definitely. But it's also incredibly complex.
It's a mix, isn't it? Cutting-edge science, huge engineering challenges, the need for global teamwork, and these really deep questions about who we are and what our responsibilities are.
Becoming multiplanetary.
Yeah.
It's not just a technical puzzle. It really forces us to look inward just as much as we look outward.
Well said.
So it leaves you thinking, doesn't it? Reflecting on these ambitious plans for the moon, for Mars. This big push outwards, a distraction from Earth's problems. Or could the perspective we gain, maybe the technology we develop for space, actually help us solve problems back home? And maybe the biggest question of all from the sources, how do we ensure any new footholds we establish out there are built on principles of fairness and justice from the start? Something to really ponder based on where these plans suggest we might be heading.